Hello, it's Nicholas from TMR Now. We are going through a program to help improve your flexibility for those of you who are thinking about doing the splits or using or improving the flexibility through the front and the back of your hip and pelvis. We'll start on your back. I have a magic circle, aren't I special? A TheraBand or a towel is also a great option. But that's what I have here with me, and you also don't need anything. You could just use your hands. I'm going to start on my tighter side, which is my raised right leg, and I'll get you to just stick that leg up in the air. The circle goes around the ball of the foot, and when stretching, if you're trying to stretch your hamstrings, if you straighten your other leg out on the floor, there's more demand in the pelvis and the hamstring, so the leg lowers. So if you're very tight, start with a bent outside leg. I'm totally aware that you might not think my leg being this high means that I'm tight or inflexible. And you might need a longer TheraBand if your leg is down here. It's absolutely fine. So I'm just going to start with the exercise I do all the time called flossing, where you try and keep your thigh bone still and bend the knee to lower the shin. Let's do 10. These don't need to be too slow or too fast. It's more about the control of the femur being still in the hip socket. So if you need more of a stretch, straighten your other leg and bring your thigh closer to your chest, as long as you can get to a straight knee. That's the whole point of this. Let's do 3 more. Just breathing casually. Your life doesn't depend on it. Now the next angle of flossing is you keep your whole leg straight and you increase the stretch at the ankle joint. See how my foot is flexed or parallel to the sole is parallel to the ceiling, and then I point and then I pull back. Almost went into a Christopher Walken impression then, but I'll save ya. Okay, so toes up and toes down. Now for some of you, this will be absolutely disgusting. And so if it's really too much, maybe just ease off it, especially ease off the pulling pressure with the circle or the band or the apparatus, and maybe just build your tolerance to the first exercise for a couple of weeks. Get some increased flexibility and then add in. Or if you don't mind the discomfort, go for it. Just trying to be inclusive. Switcheroo. I'll bend this one, I'll raise this one, and I'm trying to keep my left thigh vertical as I pump the leg up and down. I am not a naturally flexible person. I'm probably more agile or flexible than most because of my time as an aspiring dancer. But I was extremely inflexible and had to stretch a lot to get some degree of flexibility. And I got there, but I was never kind of circus bendy. But it did take about 2 hours a day of stretching and exercises to get my body into the form, and it certainly wasn't natural. And this was the exercise that really helped change the game for me, because where I was restricted was in the kind of the way the fascia interrelates with the nerve and the muscle in the nerve. So this was very useful for me. It also is something that I do constantly. Okay, it's probably more than 10, so now we add the foot, because I have a history of disc issues in my back, and depending on how, I don't want to whack myself on the hand, but let's just say if I'm being lazy or if I don't have a lot of variability in my movements. Last year, being seated on Zoom through the lockdown while teaching clients really took its toll on my body. And so I ended up with a disc episode in November, and going back to these exercises actually made a huge difference for the better, in addition to some really wonderful care from my physio Mimi. Couple more. Okay, now if you're serious about improving your flexibility, you would do that 2 or 3 times, but I don't want this to go for an hour. Okay, so that's a simple floss, hamstring and nerve component on your back, at the knee first and then at the ankle second. Let's come up to kneeling. Simple hip flexor stretch. Cushion for my comfort, and here you are. So in addition to, we're just in this kind of tilted hip flexor stretch and we're lunging forward in that tilt, and then we come back and let it go and tilt and through. So there are a few components to being able to do the splits. At least one is emotional or mental, but the main musculoskeletal barriers are muscle flexibility or mobility, which is productive flexibility, and the shape of the joints. So some people's pelvis and the way that the socket and the ball and socket come together make a split or a spread or a flat action impossible. And some people's joints naturally kind of go there. So we're all different. And the combination of those at least 3 factors, and of course, you know, then physical activity and willingness to stretch is 4 and 5, or are 4 and 5. But musculoskeletally, we're looking at, or muscularly rather, we're looking at the hip flexor, that kind of hip opening, and also the straight leg raise that we're just doing before. So it's a tilt and it's a lunge. So there are lots of factors to if you are naturally constructed to do the splits. Changearoo. Find your tilt and stretch on through. Tilt and stretch. And for those of us who didn't grow up as young girls, kind of cartwheels and splits and monkey bars, or boys doing karate, or those typical things which promote flexibility as youngsters. Increasing your flexibility or mobility does get more tricky as life gets more complicated, but not necessarily tied to aging. So I'm in a tilt, and I'm going to lunge in that tilt, trying to take it as low as you can. And I have to say, I don't feel incredibly, I feel a stretch, but it almost feels like the skin is quite tight, as well as the joint and the muscle. So there's definitely an added dimension to letting this whole area move in a way that sitting constantly has taken away. I don't know how many that is, but let's go back to your first side and let's add some extra movement. So find your tilt, take it into your deep lunge, and I just want you to circle the pelvis, very small circle. It's like you're circling the hip socket around the top of the apple, the head of the femur. 2 more. Now at the end, how deep, not how forward, how deep can you go? 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Okay, other side. So we find the tilt, we find the lunge, and I don't know if I did something else, but we definitely circle, trying to move the top of the pelvis around the top of your thigh bone. 10 circles. And now go into a deeper, deeper. It's important to have the torso upright and the head high. It's important to make this face. And come out of it. I'm adding into this ever-growing list of factors as to if you can, can't, will, won't do the splits. These are all active conditioning exercises, and some people swear by passive stretching, so kind of letting your legs hang. I definitely enjoy that for side splits, but you could also look at kind of hanging in positions or staying in positions. My body doesn't enjoy that for kind of hip flexor and hamstrings, but it does for adductors. So I'm happy to go through those as well at another time. Alrighty, onto your back. Head on the cush, and you're going to hold the back of the thigh in towards the chest. And circling again, try to bring the thigh onto you, folding in the hip. If you have a history of hip impingement or concerns through your pelvis, just make sure that you're working in a range that's comfortable and doesn't cause that feeling of, I don't want to say sloppiness or tightness and insecurity or feeling of vulnerability. Any of those types of describing words are not necessarily saying you should go into the splits at 52 years of age. I just picked that number, okay? I'm not targeting anyone. Now, the other thing that I notice, of course, is that my other side of the pelvis is getting involved, and as I increase the split, it will want to jump up. And right now, at this time, it doesn't matter if that's happening. Changearoo, pull it in, find your deep stretch. Now, I'm going to go to on top of the shin, but you stay under if you prefer. This side just needs a little bit more pull because my hip socket is a slightly different shape. And sometimes you need to have a different technique on each side, and this works better for me. Go the other way if you haven't. I don't think I did on the other side, but again, these are great exercises for general low back care. Boosting mobility and matching it with strength is never a bad thing. Okay. So I was talking before about passive movements, and one of those would be borrowed from yoga, happy baby. So I'm going to take my legs up into the air and hands around. I'm going to go inside of my ankles. Excuse the view. And then I'll hold the outside. And I'm just letting my lower back settle. If this is uncomfortable, don't persist. If you're too tight to enjoy this, I'm sorry, it doesn't feel pleasant, but start to take your legs wider. And if you're very uncomfortable, please find something else to do. And what I want you to do is just slowly start to straighten the legs. So from that bent leg position, the legs get straighter. Breathing out and stretch somewhat. 3 more. 2. And 1. Legs together. And up you come. What's the book say? Hip fold, happy baby, standing roll down into lunge. Okay. I'll stand about here and step a leg back. I've worn the wrong shorts for this. So peel down, hanging into your roll down. Again, another place of a passive moment. Let your body weight rock forward and back. Let your spine open up and drop. Step the right leg back as deep as you can. Okay, I'm going to do that again. Just move my props. Give myself some space. So I'm rolling down and I step back as deep as I can. Now, I'm actually trying to drop the pelvis down. That's why my knee is over my toe and my heel is lifted. And then I'm going to pull back and I'll go again. Now, it's actually more comfortable to have the hands on the inside of the foot and go for it. I'm going to drop that pelvis and then pull back a bit, not all the way. Drop that pelvis and up. Drop it and then come out of it. Okay, other side, hand rolling down. Let your body hang. Knees bend, knees straighten, pelvis wobbles. Step back. Move it forward if you need, and drop the hips down. Find that long line and try and open the front of your, in this instance, left side of the hip, and pull back a little bit, and drop again. And pull away. Okay, so sometimes you have to move your hands. I'll move them a little bit to try and straighten up a bit. Think of it like turning a stretch on, turning a stretch off, rather than, what am I trying to say? You don't have to be so precise. And we'll come out of there, chest up. And we'll just hang out now, let the hips fold into child's pose, but really wide. Take your arms forward if you like. Just let your hips move from side to side. And then in a separate video, I'm going to address inner thighs and side splits. I hope you enjoy stretching as much as I do, and this is something you can do forever in a day. Start slow and build up your tolerance to stretching, because it's not always comfortable at the start and you don't need to do it 16 times a week. Have a lovely day.